have been bumped down the pecking order when you go to the website.
It's my favourite source for royal news, and quite right, not that we're biased. Harry said in his BBC interview that he was forced to step away from royal duty due to security concerns. I thought Harry and Meghan had decided to leave.
Prince Harry is no stranger to headlines, but what's happening now? This is something different. It's not about Meghan. It's not about the Netflix deals or royal memoir drama. It's about something far more personal, something that cuts right to the heart of who he is, or at least who the world thinks he is. Because behind palace gates, under layers of tradition, and within the ancient chambers of British government, there's a quiet but growing conversation taking place. And it could end with Harry being stripped of the royal identity he's carried since birth. Now imagine that. Being born into royalty, raised under the crown's shadow, then watching it slowly, piece by piece, being taken away. Or worse, voluntarily letting it go. Over the past few weeks, rumors have surfaced that Britain's House of Lords, the very institution tied to centuries of monarchy, might actually be moving to formally remove Prince Harry's royal titles, the titles that, despite his exit, still link him directly to the monarchy. And the truth? It's messier than you think. Some sources claim a petition is already circulating through Parliament's upper house. Others say it's a myth, political smoke with no fire. But even if no papers have officially been filed, the fact that this is even a public discussion says everything. Because if public pressure is high enough, and if the royal family chooses silence over solidarity, Harry may find himself forced to make a decision that could alter royal history forever. And here's the part that really shocked people. While the House of Lords may not have made a formal move yet, what's happening behind the scenes suggests the walls are starting to close in. What you're about to hear is a timeline of whispers, headlines, and hidden moves, one that paints a picture of a prince at war with his past and a monarchy unsure whether to cut him off or pull him back in. So, is Prince Harry about to lose his royal titles, or will he walk away from them first, just like he did with the crown? Let's break it down. The idea that the House of Lords is plotting to strip Harry of his titles sounds like something straight out of a historical drama. Cloaked in tradition, bound by rules older than most modern governments, the House rarely makes sudden or emotional moves. So when whispers started spreading that members had quietly introduced a petition to have Prince Harry's royal titles officially revoked, people sat up straight. Online forums buzzed. News blogs picked it up. Some influencers even began circulating supposed leaked documents or statements from unnamed sources inside Parliament. Headlines shouted that the House of Lords had had enough, that Harry's repeated public criticisms of the royal family had finally pushed the aristocracy into action. But let's pause for a moment, because when actual journalists went looking for this mysterious petition, it wasn't there. No formal submission, no motion tabled, no record in Hansard. The official transcript of parliamentary proceedings. As it stands, there is no verifiable evidence that the House of Lords has initiated any official steps to remove Harry's titles. So, what gives? Well, this is where things get interesting. The absence of a petition doesn't mean the conversation isn't happening. According to political insiders, members of both houses have been under increasing pressure from constituents and media outlets to consider whether Prince Harry's titles, particularly Duke of Sussex, should still stand. Especially now that Harry has distanced himself so publicly from his royal duties, relocated across the Atlantic, and built a new life, one that many feel contradicts the role and responsibilities tied to the very titles he holds. So, even though no paperwork has been filed, a cultural, and possibly political, campaign is brewing. It's subtle, but very real. Because in the world of British aristocracy, not all battles are fought in public. Some begin with private conversations, closed-door debates, and silent nods that grow louder over time. To add even more fuel to the fire, some MPs and lords have already gone on record expressing discomfort. They say it creates confusion for the public to see someone trading on royal status while frequently attacking the very institution that grants it. Others argue the titles were given as a birthright or wedding gift, symbols of lineage and love, and taking them away would set a dangerous precedent. But here's the twist. This debate has nothing to do with public opinion polls or Instagram drama. It's about what the monarchy represents, and whether Harry still fits inside that ancient frame.
Is my favourite source for royal news, and quite right, not that we're biased. Harry said in his BBC interview that he was forced to step away from royal duty due to security concerns. I thought Harry and Meghan had decided to leave.
Still, every time the rumor is denied, another tweet or headline pops up, claiming new movement or secret support. The public appetite for this controversy is undeniable, and in some ways, that pressure is doing the job for them. Because even without a formal petition, the headlines are enough to make Prince Harry trend. And that kind of exposure forces conversations inside royal and political circles that can't be ignored forever. So, what does this all mean? Is it just smoke with no fire? Maybe. But in royal politics, smoke tends to signal something burning, even if it's behind palace curtains. And while the House of Lords hasn't officially moved yet, there's every sign that the idea is inching closer to the surface. And the real question might not be if they try to remove his titles, but whether Prince Harry will beat them to it. Because what he's been doing in the background might just change everything. While there may be no formal petition in the House of Lords, at least not yet, that hasn't stopped the public from making their voices heard. In fact, many believe it's public opinion, not Parliament, that will ultimately decide Prince Harry's fate. And right now, that opinion isn't exactly in his favor. Across the UK, and even globally, a storm has been brewing. One fueled not just by Harry's actions, but by the lingering sense of betrayal some feel toward a man once seen as the people's prince. You see, Harry wasn't just another royal, he was the rebellious one, the approachable one, the soldier, the son, the icon who brought the crown just a little bit closer to the common man. But that image has fractured. For many Britons, especially older generations loyal to the monarchy, Harry's decision to leave royal duties behind was disappointing enough. But what came after? The interviews, the memoir, the Netflix docuseries, and the subtle and not so subtle jabs at the institution he left behind crossed a line. Headlines like "Brits say it's time to strip Harry and Meghan of their royal titles" have gone viral. Major outlets like the New York Post, Express UK, and Daily Mail have reported on polls showing the majority of Brits believe the couple should no longer hold titles associated with a monarchy they publicly criticize. On talk shows, podcasts, and radio, callers rant that Harry is exploiting his title for personal gain.
Apparently, palace officials have been trying their hardest to strip Harry of his titles, but
cashing in on royal drama while supposedly rejecting everything it stands for. One tweet, now with over 200,000 likes, summed up the sentiment: "You can't keep the perks without the responsibilities. If you quit the job, you don't keep the title on your desk." Even figures with no political ties, journalists, celebrities, public intellectuals, have started echoing that line of thinking. They argue that Harry and Meghan's brand is built on contradiction, renouncing royal life while profiting from the very prestige those titles bring. It's not just a legal or procedural debate anymore. It's emotional, deeply cultural. For many Brits, it hits at the heart of what it means to be royal: service, tradition, dignity. And when someone appears to walk away from all that, only to use the royal label as a marketing badge, it stings. Some of Harry's defenders argue that this backlash is driven by racism, xenophobia, and a rigid institution unwilling to change. And there's truth to that too. It's not a one-sided story. But what's undeniable is this: the tide of public support is shifting. And in the age of headlines and hashtags, a shifting tide can become a tsunami. Because when enough people say a title should be taken, lawmakers start to listen. The royal family starts to listen, and even Harry himself, as proud as he may be, might start to listen too. But while the court of public opinion is loud, the legal process is far more complicated. And that brings us to the next twist in this story. Even if the public, the media, and the politicians want it to happen, can they actually do it? So here's the big question everyone keeps asking. Can Prince Harry legally be stripped of his royal titles? And the answer? Yes, but it's nowhere near as simple as signing a petition or throwing together a vote. In fact, legally removing a royal title is one of the most complex and controversial moves the British government can make. And it hasn't happened in modern times without a serious constitutional process. Here's why. The UK monarchy isn't just a family tradition, it's a legal framework, one that is deeply embedded in the structure of British governance. Titles like Duke of Sussex are granted by the monarch, but can only be revoked through an act of parliament. That means both the House of Commons and the House of Lords would need to approve a formal bill specifically targeting Harry's titles.
Yeah, I agree.
So we are in total agreement. They are very dependent on each other.
And yes, it's happened before. The most famous case, the Titles Deprivation Act of 1917, which stripped German-descended royals of their British titles during World War I due to national security fears. But that was over a century ago, during wartime. Using the same legal precedent against Prince Harry today would be extreme and politically dangerous. Even the idea of introducing such a bill would spark a constitutional firestorm. First off, the royal family would likely be dragged into a very public and very ugly political debate, something they are notoriously averse to. Remember, the monarchy survives largely on the goodwill of the public and the perception that it stands above politics. Any bill targeting Harry would drag the Queen or King Charles into the mud, forced to either defend or reject a decision that would tear at family loyalties and public trust. Second, there's the matter of public funding and political will. Would MPs really want to spend taxpayer money debating royal drama in Parliament when the UK is facing inflation, immigration challenges, and healthcare shortages? Some argue it would be political suicide. And lastly, and maybe most ironically, even if the UK government did successfully strip Harry of the title Duke of Sussex, he'd still be a prince. That's a birthright, not a courtesy title. So, short of a full constitutional overhaul, you can take the dukedom away, but not his royal blood. Still, loopholes do exist. One proposed workaround, a bill introduced by an MP or peer as a symbolic act, not legally binding, but politically pressuring. This would let Parliament voice the people's frustration without diving into a full legislative war. Think of it as a warning shot across the bow. But here's the most curious part. Despite all the noise, no such bill has been tabled, not officially. And yet, whispers keep surfacing that something is brewing, that a backbencher might introduce a motion, that a peer in the Lords is testing support, that someone somewhere is just waiting for the right moment. Why the delay? Maybe they're waiting to see if Harry forces their hand. Maybe they're hoping he does something so controversial that removing his titles becomes unavoidable. Or maybe, just maybe, they're hoping he does it himself. Because the next section of this story isn't about Parliament or politics. It's about what Prince Harry himself has been planning in secret. And when that came to light, even his inner circle was stunned.
Does not distinguish between private or commercial use of the HRH. It reads, with the Queen's blessing, the Sussexes will continue to maintain their private patronages and associations.
While the public and political noise around Harry's titles grows louder, the man at the center of it all hasn't remained silent behind the scenes. In fact, it appears Prince Harry has been wrestling with a decision of his own, one that could preempt everything Parliament or the monarchy might choose to do. According to reports that surfaced earlier this week, Harry allegedly considered changing his surname to Spencer, the maiden name of his late mother, Princess Diana. Let that sink in. That's not just a branding tweak or a PR move, that's a powerful, deeply symbolic gesture. Because for Harry, adopting the Spencer name would be more than a nod to his mother. It would be a full-throated rejection of the institution that he believes failed her, and that some argue failed him too. Why Spencer? To understand that, you have to go back to the trauma that shaped Harry's worldview. The loss of his mother, the relentless press attention, the feeling of being a pawn in an institution that prioritized image over emotional well-being. The Spencer name represents a personal identity that's free of royal protocol. It's a return to roots, a claim of independence from a lineage that has caused him visible pain. And according to The Guardian, Harry reportedly floated this idea with his inner circle. There was even discussion about whether it would appear on legal documents tied to his U.S. residence and business dealings. Of course, the change never happened, at least not officially. But the fact that it was seriously considered tells us everything. This wasn't a joke. This was the prince formerly known as His Royal Highness, toying with the idea of removing the final thread connecting him to the monarchy by name. And it's not the only signal Harry's been sending. Over the past year, he's slowly begun to drop royal branding from public-facing projects. His new business entities, such as Travelist and Archewell, make zero mention of the Duke of Sussex title. Recent interviews, too, have subtly distanced him from his royal past. Gone are the coat of arms references, the former working royal disclaimers. In their place is something more ambiguous and intentionally undefined. It's like Harry's caught between two worlds, not quite royal, not fully removed, a self-imposed exile who hasn't decided whether to cut the final cord. But if the rumors about his name change are true, it suggests he's closer than ever to doing just that.
Again, of their royal titles, the New York Post is reporting that locals in the UK say enough is enough, especially after Prince Harry's disastrous BBC interview, which aired.
Prince Harry and the Duchess of Montecito should lose their official royal title.
And here's what makes that even more complicated. If Harry does voluntarily renounce his title, it would take the wind out of any formal effort to strip it from him. Parliament would be outmaneuvered, the monarchy would avoid the mess, and Harry would control the narrative, again. But that scenario also sets a dangerous precedent. Because if every royal can renounce titles when things get uncomfortable, what happens to the structure, the meaning, the weight of the monarchy? The palace knows this, which brings us to the next phase in this silent war, how the royal family is responding, or rather, how they're choosing not to. Through all the noise, headlines, and whispers, there's been one player in this saga that's remained remarkably quiet, the royal family itself. And that silence, it's not accidental, it's strategic. Ever since Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties in 2020, Buckingham Palace has walked a tightrope, trying to maintain royal decorum while weathering public controversy. Every interview, every reveal, every accusation from across the Atlantic has added pressure to the already fragile relationship between the Sussexes and the Crown. Yet, in the face of mounting criticism, the palace has refused to take formal action against Harry's titles. At least, not publicly. Why? According to insiders, it comes down to one word: optics. Stripping Prince Harry of his titles would be a nuclear move. Not just politically, but emotionally, for the royal family and the public. It would instantly confirm the idea that Harry is no longer welcome, no longer trusted, no longer part of the inner circle. It would validate every accusation he's made, every claim of exclusion, mistreatment, and emotional neglect. And for King Charles, Harry's own father, the decision becomes even more painful. Imagine having to sign off on a royal decree that removes your own son's noble title, a title you once bestowed upon him as a wedding gift, a title that represents both love and legacy. Now imagine doing that while the world watches, dissecting your every move. It's a lose-lose situation for the Crown. If they act, they look cold. If they stay silent, they appear weak. Either way, the institution takes a hit. But here's the thing. Silence isn't the same as inaction. Behind palace walls, discussions are happening. Courtiers have reportedly debated the pros and cons of removing the Duke of Sussex title. Some are in favor, arguing that Harry has become too much of a liability. Others are concerned that doing so would escalate the conflict and risk alienating the younger generation of royal watchers who still sympathize with him.
Is planning to strip Harry and Meghan of their royal titles when he ascends to the throne.
Even more telling is how the royals are managing public references to Harry. You'll notice he's increasingly being referred to not as Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, but simply Harry, especially in official communications. It's subtle, quiet, but meaningful. It's as if they're preparing the public, slowly erasing the title from the narrative before it ever becomes official. Some royal experts believe the family is waiting for Harry to make the next move, to either double down on his independence or extend a hand back toward reconciliation. Because once they strip a title, there's no undoing it. And for a family built on centuries of tradition, finality is something they approach with extreme caution. Still, caution doesn't mean immunity. If public pressure continues to grow, if Harry keeps making headlines for all the wrong reasons, and if Parliament begins making noise the palace can no longer ignore, the royals might find themselves forced to act. But before that happens, one more twist remains. A looming decision that could tilt the scales one way or the other. For months now, speculation has swirled about whether Harry will be stripped of his titles. But what if we're asking the wrong question? What if Harry isn't waiting for Parliament to act? What if he's preparing to beat everyone to the punch and walk away first? Behind closed doors, that possibility is gaining traction. According to multiple royal commentators and insiders, Prince Harry has already begun laying the groundwork for a future where he no longer uses any royal title, officially or publicly. His recent business moves are a clear departure from traditional royal branding. His team no longer emphasizes the Duke of Sussex moniker. And in interviews, he's increasingly referred to simply as Harry. No prince, no pomp. Insiders say Harry is deeply aware of the optics. He knows the public is divided. He knows Parliament is watching. He knows the royal family is walking on eggshells. And with each passing week, it becomes more obvious that he holds the most power in this situation. Not because he's royalty, but because he's already proven he's not afraid to walk away. Remember, this is the man who stepped back from senior royal duties, the man who moved to California.
And to finally strip Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of their HRH titles, Riley Sullivan.
I just find it very uncomfortable, and I think a huge number of your viewers would agree, that you either respect the system.
The man who told the world his family cut him off, emotionally, financially, structurally. And yet, he rebuilt. He found new footing. He wrote his own story, even when that story was painful to read. So if Harry were to suddenly issue a public statement renouncing his titles, rejecting Duke of Sussex, refusing to be addressed as His Royal Highness, it wouldn't just change the headlines. It would neutralize the entire controversy. Parliament would lose its power. The royal family would avoid scandal. And Harry, for better or worse, would once again reclaim control of the narrative. Some believe this is exactly what he's waiting for. The right moment, the right climate, the right opportunity to make the move on his own terms. A final act of independence that severs the last symbolic tie to the monarchy. But if he does it, it would be irreversible. There's no going back. No prince has voluntarily renounced his own title in modern UK history. It would be unprecedented. It would be seismic. And it would force the royal family, the public, and the institution itself to confront something they've long tried to avoid. That maybe Harry was never coming back. The question now is not if the title is going away. It's who will say it first. This controversy, like so many tied to Prince Harry, isn't just about one man or one decision. It's about the very definition of royalty in the modern age. What does it mean to be royal when you've walked away from the palace gates? When you've moved across oceans, started new ventures, launched media companies, and opened the family vault for the world to see? At what point does a title stop being an honor and start becoming a contradiction? Prince Harry is not just navigating a personal identity crisis. He's forcing an ancient institution to look in the mirror, to ask itself whether tradition is a strength or a cage. The calls to strip his title will likely continue. The public anger isn't going away. The political whispers may grow louder, especially as other royal controversies surface and public patience wears thin. But Harry isn't just reacting. He's redefining. By hinting at dropping the Duke of Sussex title, by considering the Spencer name, by operating independently of the palace, Harry is testing the limits of royal identity. He's asking whether being born into a crown should define a person forever, or whether you can walk away and still have worth, purpose, and power. The royal family, meanwhile, remains trapped in its own delicate balancing act. Protect the crown or protect the bloodline. Act with strength or act with empathy. Every move comes with risk. Every silence speaks volumes. In the end, whether Harry is stripped of his titles or chooses to abandon them himself, the fallout will echo far beyond Buckingham Palace. It will shape how future royals are treated, how the British public sees its monarchy, and how the world views one man's journey from palace to personal freedom. Because this isn't just about royalty, it's about legacy, about loyalty, about what happens when the crown no longer fits, and whether it's taken from you or you choose to set it down yourself. And as the world watches, divided, fascinated, outraged, one thing is clear: Prince Harry's story is far from over.